So good morning and a warm welcome to all of you, and in particular to our special guest today, whom Djenita will introduce in just a minute. A little bit of background on the working group for Bosnia and Herzegovina. We formed about 4 years ago with a very practical agenda, which is to advance the interests of Bosnia and Herzegovina in 4 areas. One, EU membership, and parallel to that for security reasons, NATO membership, ending genocide denial and the glorification of war criminals. And then we added a 4th element, which is equality under the law as a basis for moving things forward in terms of the legal system. We do these roundtable discussions every other month, and we like to hear varied perspectives on issues that have come up, issues that advance the agenda that our group has working with others. And it's on that basis today that we'll be hearing from Professor Muhasilovic. So Djenita, I'll turn things over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And for those of you who do not know, Patrick has been the godfather of the St. Louis community, Bosnian community in Missouri and in St. Louis, where there is allegedly over 60,000 Bosnians, and that's the largest community of Bosnians out of the United States in one spot. Actually, they're currently working on organizing the 30th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide, and there has been events weekly up until the July 11th, and he has been involved with the Bosnian refugees and otherwise starting all the projects relating to Bosnia since literally 1992 or 93, I'm not sure, but he's been around for a very long time. Thank you, Patrick, for everything that you do. So with that said, I would like to introduce Professor Jahja Muhasilovic, who is an assistant professor in the International Relations Department at the International University of Sarajevo. He's also known, I think, in these modern times, as a person who shows up a lot and who's an invited speaker at very many TV shows, at very many platforms. You can watch his speeches on YouTube. He is actually a foreign relations expert and a political analyst. And that is where his activities that prompted my kind of thinking that he should be one of our presenters at the roundtable discussion today. Professor Muhasilovic received his bachelor's degree at the University of Sarajevo in the Department of History at the Faculty of Philosophy. Then he received his master's degree in 2015 at the University of Istanbul. And then he got his Ph.D. degree in 2020 at the Bogazici University by defending the thesis, Turkish Public Diplomacy and Soft Power in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Sandzak region. He also published this thesis as a book the same year, and it was published by the Union of Turkish World Municipalities. And he is actually in charge of foreign relations as an expert in charge of the Balkans on behalf of that organization. Professor Muhasilovic also has co-authored other books and journal articles, which were published in English and Turkish. Obviously, he's fluent in Bosnia, very involved, as I said, in the public arena of Bosnia and Herzegovina. His areas of expertise are geopolitics, the politics of the Balkans, and the Turkish foreign policy. The reason the theme for today's discussion for Dr. Professor Jahja Muhasilovic is tracing the roots of the current political crisis in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And with that, I would like to invite Professor Muhasilovic to join us in the discussion.
Okay, thank you for this introduction, and I would like to thank you all of you for gathering today and giving me a chance to say something about very complex topic. And also I would like to greet my cousins in the United States. It is actually very complex topic. So since I'm a historian, I'll go like chronologically since this disintegration of Yugoslavia. And one question I have, how much time I have?
These usually last up to an hour, and the meetings. And if you can kind of condense that section, because at the end of your presentation, at least the one that you have prepared for us, what we would like to do is maybe ask you how. First of all, we would like to have a Q&A because that's always quite interesting. And also, so maybe if you could do this in about half an hour, and then we can, in the second part, we would like to ask you directly, how can we help from here? Because our goal is to help from the United States, and as a political action committee, we can influence maybe the political arena in the United States and help Bosnia and Herzegovina.
All right, sounds good. So I'll start with the disintegration of Yugoslavia to just give you, for those maybe who are not aware of the process, to give you some background, historical background. So Bosnia was one of the republics, 6 official republics of Socialist Federative Republic of Yugoslavia, and it became independent state in the 1992, immediately after the Slovenia and Croatia. So we had this war between 92 and 1995. Some consider it to be ethnic genocide, some consider it to be an aggression. I'm of opinion that it is both aggression and ethnic genocide that happened here in Bosnia, but that is more of like judicial issue to be decided what is the actual nature of that war. However, in the beginning, there was the stance. I will start from geopolitics and then focus to the domestic dynamics that has caused this situation that Bosnia has found itself in. So geopolitically speaking, Yugoslavia was pretty strong state in a Cold War organization of the world. So it was between 2 blocks, and it had very good diplomatic ties. So it was a respectable member of the United Nations, and it also co-founded what was called the non-aligned movement together with Egypt and India. So they had very dynamic foreign policy and a lot of influence, obviously, on both blocks. So on the Soviet side or Eastern Bloc, and in the Western camp as well. And when the disintegration of Yugoslavia started for various reasons, primarily because of the Serbian nationalism, but there are also many more dynamics who also influenced that process. So Yugoslavia kept its diplomatic ties and the network. So that was not gone overnight, and the appetite towards the recognition of the newly created republics was mixed, because some of the states in the West now, since the Soviet Union was not a superpower anymore, so we had Russia, which was pretty weak in the 1990s. So the appetite for the recognition was mixed, because some of the states were willing to immediately recognize newly founded republics, while others were more reluctant in that sense. United States in the beginning was one of those reluctant states, because the United States were for the territorial integrity of Yugoslavia in the initial months of the disintegration. So there was this U.S. ambassador in Belgrade, Warren Zimmerman. So during his mandate, they were more pro-Belgrade, I would say. But later on, as situation on the ground was changing, as atrocities started, as Serbian troops or previous Yugoslav people's armies became Serb-dominated, and as atrocities have started in Slovenia and Croatia, later on in Bosnia as well, that stance of the United States slowly started changing, and they were after that, like after, I would say, mid-92 or late 92, they were fully for those new republics. So when it comes to Bosnia, so one part of the Western community was supportive of Bosnia's independence, while other side or some of the very well-known diplomats, respected diplomats, were against the independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. One of those guys was Henry Kissinger. Although he was not dealing with that issue in details, because I believe he was already retired back then. But he was against the idea that Bosnia should be an independent state. You can find his interview in, I believe maybe it's ABC or CNN, I'm not sure, where he's basically saying that Bosnia should not exist as a state, and that it is a combination, that Bosnian national identity actually does not exist, and that it is basically some form of mutual identity formed by Serbs and Croats. Also, you had British diplomats not so much supportive of Bosnia's independence, like John Major's government was totally against it. It was totally pro-Belgrade in the beginning. You have the government of Francois Mitterrand in France, who was also supporting Belgrade's position. The only country which was fully supporting the independence of Bosnia, and that was obviously for its own geopolitical reasons, was Germany. So Germany was one of the first states which recognized the independence of Bosnia. Even the Muslim majority countries in the beginning, in the initial months of the Bosnia's independence, had this ambivalent view of Bosnia's independence, including Turkey, which is considered to be probably the closest Muslim majority country to Bosnia. They were even in the beginning were supporting the territorial integrity of Yugoslavia because of the Kurdish issue that they had in the early 1990s. But later on, as genocide has started in Bosnia, they shifted their position and started openly promoting Bosnia's independence. World was caught pretty much unprepared for what was going to happen in the early 1992. So Serbs inside the Bosnian border, they started creating autonomous regions and started ethnically cleaning non-Serb population from these autonomous regions. Basically the state institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which just became independent, were not strong enough to control the entire territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they could not prevent the majority of what was going on in those areas where Serbs were forming a majority. So that was the start of what is going on, what is going to happen for the next 3.5 years. As like the entire 1993, like it was the worst year for Bosnia probably in its history, because it was left alone on the world stage. So we did not have a lot of support coming from outside. We did not have enough arms, enough logistics. We did not have enough food, enough electricity and other necessities. And basically in the 1993, the Croatian side also turned against the Army of Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is, to remind you, a legitimate armed forces of internationally recognized Bosnia and Herzegovina by the United Nations. So it is nothing. Sometimes it is in literature. It is called like ethnic army, which is not the case. In the 1992 and the 1993, 30% of the staff and of the soldiers inside the Army of Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina were non-Bosniaks, so they were non-Muslims. So Bosniaks were only 70% of that army, and you had like many people positioned in high command of the army who were not Bosniaks themselves. So it was the legitimate force or armed forces of Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and nothing similar to a Croatian Defense Council or Army of Republika Srpska. So as war was going on, no one was expecting Bosnian army to defend itself because army did not have enough arms, so they were in inferior position against the Serbian troops and against the Croatian troops, and they were basically encircled by both of these armies. But Army of Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, despite the fact that they had very limited capacities, they managed to defend themselves in the areas where they organized, where they managed to organize themselves, and they started repelling the attacks initially by the Croat forces, and they started defeating the Croat forces, which forced the international community led by the United States to push the peace agreement between the Bosniaks and the Croats. And in the 1994, by the Washington Treaty, you have the formation of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, sometimes called Bosniak-Croat Federation. And in that confederation, to put it that way, basically they joined their forces against the Serbian side, and they started repelling the Serbian attacks and basically started reconquering the territory that was previously under the control of the Army of Republika Srpska. And in the 1995, also NATO helped by bombing the Bosnian Serbs. They basically helped the advancing of the Army of Republika Bosnia and Herzegovina together with the Croatian Defense Council. And as you know, in the 1995, Dayton Peace Agreement was signed. So basically, the roots of the problem in Bosnia are today based in that agreement, if you ask me, because that agreement did some things which from the point of ethics were not moral and ethical, because that peace agreement recognized Army of Republika Srpska and the Republika Srpska as a integrative part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what they did through that agreement is that they gave a lot of autonomy, a high level of autonomy to Republika Srpska, despite the fact that they were separatist troops inside Bosnia, and despite the fact that they were fighting against the official government, which was internationally recognized. So that was the first mistake that was done by the Dayton Peace Agreement. The other one was that Bosniak-Croat Federation, they divided that part of Bosnia. So Bosnia is composed basically of two entities. So what they did through that agreement is that they created cantons which are having also high level of autonomy from the federation itself. And they basically created 3 cantons which are having Croat majority, and they gave them like strong institutions which are autonomous, or pretty much I would say independent from the state institutions. So all of these cantons are having their prime ministers, their council of ministers, they're having their ministries, which are independent from the state. To give you one example, when I was doing a survey in Bosnian schools, I had to get a permission from the ministries of education, and there is no, so state Ministry of Education could not give me that permission to survey, for instance, kids in Livno, which is like Croat-controlled canton. I had to get that permission from the cantonal ministry. And Bosnia and Herzegovina at the moment is having, for example, it's having 14 different educational ministries, and each of them are independent. Like so state cannot control those ministries at all. They cannot order them anything. And that confederation, or that consociational system that was created by the Dayton Peace Agreement, in my opinion, is the root of the problems which are going to continue through years in a post-war period. So when the war ended, the stance of the Western community, I would say, was pretty much positive towards the Bosnia. Although they forced all 3 sides now to sign the Dayton Peace Agreement, yet they were working actively to create Bosnia as a functional state. So they got themselves involved in the state building process, especially United States. Europeans were assisting there, but the main actor was here for approximately 1 decade after the war. It was United States. And United States was basically pushing all these reforms, and the Europeans were following. So they were assisting in that process. And at one point, Americans even had like between 50 and 60,000 troops here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it was impossible to any of these, neither Bosnia, Croat, or Serbian side, to do anything against the will of the United States. So United States was basically controlling the situation here in Bosnia in a few years after the war. Also, a Dayton Peace Agreement created the institution of Office of High Representative. An Office of High Representative is totally independent from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He is a so-called civilian implementator of the Dayton Peace Agreement. That is his official position. And he is acting as the executive branch of the Peace Implementation Council. Peace Implementation Council is a foreign body composed of foreign countries, generally great powers. So United States is there, Russia is there, Germany is there, United Kingdom, France, Italy, Canada, Turkey is even there. Turkey is permanently representing the Muslim world through the Organization of Islamic Conference. So these 11 countries, they have like, it's called steering board of the Peace Implementation Council. So they are basically responsible for the policies of Office of High Representative, because he is the executive branch of them. Okay, and they have monthly meetings, and those meetings are joined by the ambassadors of these countries. And basically, the Office of High Representative is representing the will of the great powers. And in the 1998 Office of High Representative was given so-called bond powers rights. Bond powers rights is like a vast amount of rights that he is having, and he can basically change any politician in Bosnia and Herzegovina. He can close down any political party in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and he can push, or she can push any kind of law, any kind of constitutional change in Bosnia and Herzegovina. There is only one limited part of the constitution that he cannot change, but he has the most power over the Bosnia and Herzegovina, more power than any politician in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that is the system that is here in Bosnia, that Bosnia inherited after the war. And basically, a lot of things that were unfolding after the war are responsible for the situation that we found ourselves in for the last couple of years. So everything was great until the mid-2000s. Okay, so there was this positive wind coming from the West, where they were pushing all these reforms. Americans were very interested to make Bosnia a functional state. There were some mistakes, of course, down the road, but the main idea was to make a Bosnia functional state, and they were actively working in that direction. Also, we had until the 2005 and 6, we had, with the exception of one high representative, we had very good high representatives. In my opinion, a lot of Bosnians would agree with you, those who are pro-Bosnian. Paddy Ashdown was a brilliant guy. So he pushed a lot of reforms, very constructive reforms here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Under his mandate, Bosnia and Herzegovina managed to build strong institutions, not strong enough, obviously, but he managed to merge a lot of institutions because Bosnia was totally divided immediately after the Dayton Peace Agreement. So we had like 3 armies. There was the Army of Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Vojska Republike Srpske, and the Croat Defense Council. So with the Washington Treaty, what followed after that was the merging of the Army of Republika Bosnia and Herzegovina together with the Croat Defense Council to create the Army of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and later on those two merged with the Vojska Republike Srpske to create the Armed Forces of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Also, some state police was created. SIPA, it's like federal police in the United States, so it is overseeing all the police departments, so they can arrest throughout the Bosnia, which is not the case with the police of Federation and the police of Republika Srpska. So their power is only limited inside the borders of those entities, or the police forces of the cantons. They were also limited. They are also limited inside the borders of those canton areas. So a lot of these state institutions were formed, and Bosnia was slowly becoming a functional state. But many things started changing in the mid-2000s. There are few reasons why the climate regarding the Bosnia and Herzegovina has changed. The first reason I believe, was the withdrawal of the US troops from Bosnia and Herzegovina. That was officially in 2006, although Americans were reducing as years were passing after the war, as it became obvious that there won't be any conflict anymore. So they were, as each year was passing, they were reducing the number of their troops. And in 2006, they finally closed their military base here in Bosnia. And basically that mission was over, and the Europeans took over that role of keeping the peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So they came with this EU4 Althea mission, which is highly incompetent in my opinion, and very, very inefficient. So that was the first reason. Other reason was Paddy Ashdown's mandate was over, and it was over with these successful high representatives. So after Paddy Ashdown, generally weak high representatives took power, and that created some sort of vacuum in which nationalism started reoccurring once again, especially the Serbian and the Croat nationalism. Also, there was a Butmir process failure. Butmir process was the last attempt by the Western community to help out Bosnia with the reforms. An April package did not pass the political parties, because what Western community, they involved the domestic actors, domestic political parties, and they had to pass this so-called April package, which was reforming the state. And that was not possible because Stranka for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Stranka za Bosnu i Hercegovinu, led back then by Haris Silajdžić, did not want to vote for that package. He had his reasons. I believe he has some arguments. He had idea why he was against it because he believed that with the 23% of the parliament, you could block the election of the president, because it was promoting the idea of indirect election for the presidential council. So president would not be directly elected through general elections; he would be elected through parliament, and he saw a lot of risks there. So he was not willing to vote for the April package, and it failed. And after that, basically, Western communities slowly started losing interest for Bosnia and Herzegovina. That also was correlated with the geopolitical dynamics. United States under the Bush administration now, so administration changed in the United States. They launched this global war on terror after the 2001 9/11 attacks, and they gradually started losing the interest for the Balkans. And they started shifting more towards the Middle East, towards Afghanistan, towards Iraq, and Bosnia was not on top of the agenda anymore. And basically, as Americans were losing the interest, Serbs and the Croats, those who are promoting separatist policies, they found it like fertile ground to launch their policies once again. So you had the reemergence of the nationalist policies inside the Bosnian politics. Also, you have the Dodik becoming an important political factor here in Bosnia, because it was done with the SDS. SDS was the political party which was leading the Bosnian Serbs during the war, and they were totally defeated. So Dodik took power, and basically the era of Dodik started like in the early 2000s, and he became like total political hegemon in the mid 2000s. So that was like around the times when the Americans were pulling from this region. Europeans took the mission, but they were incompetent in a sense that they were very divided among themselves. So European Union is composed of 27 now member states, each of them having different policies. And there is no one comprehensive policy that EUFOR mission was following. And that was the ideal ground for politicians such as Dodik and Čović to become even stronger. After the Bush administration, you have Obama's administration, which was even less interested in Bosnia than Bush's administration, and he was following this policy of pivot to Asia. So Bosnia was again not on top of the agenda anymore. And between the Bush and in the late Bush administration and the early Obama administration, you had the 2008 financial crisis. 2000, and I mean, you are aware what happened back then. Basically, West was could not deal with these geopolitical adventures anymore, and that even decreased the importance of Bosnia in the Western minds even further. Like Bosnia slided like to probably like 30th or 40th place in foreign policy priorities, and as the interest for Bosnia was decreasing, basically politicians such as Dodik and Čović, they were gaining more and more chance to project their policies. 2008 financial crisis, although it hit the Western camp more severely than other countries such as Russia, China, and Turkey were economically growing. And they, as helped out with this economic growth, their interest for the region also has risen. So around those years, Russia became more involved in the region. And as Russia was becoming more involved in the region with malign interest here, that even encouraged Dodik and politicians such as Dodik to act even more aggressively. That encouraged Serbia. So Serbia was not anymore a defeated guy in the region. Did not have that American. They were not feeling anymore that American pressure. And now they had Russia. They had China. China was also growing. China's interest was also growing. Turkey's influence was also growing. So you have the Arab capital from Gulf Arab countries also entering the region. So you have the formation of this non-Western camp and their influence in the Balkans as Western interest was diminishing here in the region. When it comes to, so these are shortly like the global and geopolitical dynamics that has influenced the climate, which was in which all this happened to Bosnia and Herzegovina. When it comes to the domestic political dynamics, so a lot of things also were correlated with the geopolitics. So as I have said, SDS was defeated, so it was gone, and Dodik came up as someone who's going to reform the Serbian politics. So his initial years were very successful in a sense. So he was very pro-Bosnian. He was one of the rare Serbian politicians who, in those years, was openly saying that the genocide in Srebrenica did happen. And he was basically lying to everyone, lying to Western community, lying to Bosnians that he is pro-Bosnian. Also, Croatian politics were defeated in Bosnia after the so-called Croat self-governance movement, which was defeated in the early 2000s. And Croat politicians also, they passed through some form of cleaning from the nationalism. And in those like second half of the 2000s, you have Čović was also becoming very, very popular, and later on he will be the hegemon inside the Croatian politics. But back then, Bosnian Croats, they had political plurality. So you had a lot of political parties. There was not only HDZ, although they were the strongest, always the strongest Croat party, but they had a strong opposition inside the Croat community here in Bosnia. But as Čović's power was growing, he basically eliminated all these political parties. So he imprisoned some of those leaders of those political parties. So slowly, as the geopolitical climate was changing in the world, and there was less interest for Bosnia and Herzegovina, these Croat and Bosniak nationalist politicians, they were becoming stronger and stronger. When it comes to pro-Bosnian side, I think a lot of failures from the pro-Bosnian side also are responsible for us to find ourselves in this situation. One of those failures is failure of the Annex 7. So Bosnian politicians, they never managed to push the Annex 7. Annex 7 is basically talking about the return of the refugees to the places that they were previously living in Bosnia, and to basically to reconstruct the demographic picture of Bosnia and Herzegovina as it was before the aggression. So the failure of Annex 7 is one of the main reasons why Bosnia and Herzegovina never managed to create a strong state and strong state institutions. Other thing is the division among the pro-Bosnian side. To give you one example, immediately after the war, inside the National Assembly of Republika Srpska, the strongest Bosnian party, SDA, was having more than 20 delegates inside the National Assembly, MPs, if you will. Now the number of those MPs, together with the Croats, is just 4, 3 plus 1. So the number of MPs inside the National Assembly of Republika Srpska was reduced from 23 to 3, and that was done. That happened for because of many reasons. One of those reasons is the political division. So they divided themselves. So SDP after that entered the election process in Republika Srpska. After that, you have the Stranka za Bosnu and Herzegovina. So at the moment, like they are forming these like trying to build these strong coalitions and act together, but they cannot gather that much votes anymore inside the National Assembly. Other reason was that Dodik through time managed to create pro-Republika Srpska Bosniaks. Because according to the Constitution of Republika Srpska, half of the Council of Ministers of Republika Srpska belongs, according to their constitution, it belongs to Bosniaks and to Croats. In the beginning, when the pro-Bosnian side was the strongest opposition inside Republika Srpska, it was working well, but through time he managed to create pro-Dodik or pro-SNSD Bosniaks. So still half of the Council of Ministers is composed of the Bosniaks and the Croats, but the problem is that they are pro-Republika Srpska and pro-Dodik. Okay, so he basically shifted those who were pro-Bosnian with those who are now pro-Dodik. That's another failure of the Bosnian politics, I believe, because they were very inefficient in building pro-state policies inside the institutions of Republika Srpska. And I believe, like, if like 50% of blame is on Dodik's side, I believe the other 50% is on pro-Bosnian side in that sense. So Bosnia and Herzegovina, to put it shortly, never managed to build strong state institutions. But so as 2010s were approaching, we had like Bosnia and Herzegovina had West, which was not so much interested. There was a lot of malign influence of non-Western actors such as Russia and China here in Bosnia, and the state institutions were not efficient enough. And what dramatically changed the situation is what happened in the 2010s. So what happened in the 2010s? I believe I have a few more minutes, right? How much time I have, if I may ask? I cannot hear you.
We have 20 more minutes for the entire
Okay.
for the entire. But let me just greet Philip Weiner, who just joined us. He was one of the judges at the International Court of Justice in Bosnia and Herzegovina for about 10 years. Philip?
No, just four and a half.
Just four and a half. Okay, sorry. But I've met him a long time ago when he was one of the judges enforcing the laws that you were talking about in Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's from the United States.
I'm very sorry I'm late.
Welcome. So 2010s. One of the things which speeded up the process was the census of 2013. The census of 2013 disclosed one thing, and that is that Bosniaks, for the first time in modern history, are more than 50% of the population. On the other hand, Croats, who used to be 1/4 of the population, according to this census, were 15.4% of the population. Also, the same year, Croatia entered the European Union. And that even more speeded up the process of the emigration of the Bosnian Croats. Okay, so some sort of exodus of the Croats started after Croatia became a full member of the EU, because Bosnian Croats, since they are having dual citizenship with Croatia, they could use these job opportunities that EU was offering, and they extensively started emigrating from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So that caused a panic in Zagreb and among the Croat politicians here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They became aware of the fact that they might become insignificant minority if those trends continue. Okay, and Croatia used the opportunity that they are full members of EU and NATO to lobby the change of the electoral law that would provide them the hegemonies that they had inside the system, no matter how much they are represented in demographics. So probably on the ground at the moment, there is less than 10% of Croats here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Croats were aware of the fact that one day Bosniaks might ask them this question: why we are power sharing? So the system is like ethnic power sharing system. Why we are sharing the same amount of power if we are, let's say, 60% and you are, let's say, 6% of the population? And they were aware that Bosniaks one day might question that. That's why Čović is constantly emphasizing one thing, which he basically came up with. So it was never mentioned by the Bosniak politicians. He calls that a Bosniak demographic opportunism. That the Bosniaks one day might question that and might take the rights from the Croats. Okay, and that panic caused Croatia to actively lobby in EU and NATO. And they are in better position than Bosnia and Herzegovina, since they are full EU and NATO members. On the other hand, I believe a lot of things changed in the West as well. So Dodik and Čović started gaining more and more partners inside the Western politics. I mean, you are aware in the United States what is going on. So you have the emergence in Europe, especially in Europe, but in the United States as well. The sort of politicians who are white supremacists, Christian fundamentalists, at least Islamophobic, which are sharing the similar worldviews with the Dodik and Čović, right? And they, by lobbying inside these circles, they managed to shift the policies of certain states against the Bosnia, right? And basically that culminated with the 2022 change of the election law imposed by the Christian Schmidt, which is highly promoting apartheid here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because in some cantons, Croat votes are even 6-7 times heavier than the votes of the Bosniaks. So it's a classical apartheid. And he did that, this systemic change, he did in order to keep the power of the HDZ Bosnia and Herzegovina, right? To keep their power, no matter what percentage of Croats are actively living and voting in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Other reason why this was done is that the last two mandates of the SDA party, because in that mandate, SDA built strong relations with Turkey, which means building a strong relation, since AKP is a ruling party in Turkey, building a strong relations with the Muslim Brotherhood movement. And all that correlated with the Arab Spring, when around the mid-2010s, Turkey was very close to create some form of Sunni crescent in the Middle East, because you had the regime change in Tunisia, and the party that came to power, and Nahda, was based in the Muslim Brotherhood movement. You had in Libya, when Gaddafi was toppled, you had again Muslim Brotherhood taking power. In Egypt, when the Mubarak was toppled, you had Muslim Brotherhood led by Morsi back then, toppling Mubarak's regime. And you had in Syria, the opposition was mainly pro-Muslim Brotherhood. So that basically frightened both United States and Israel that Turkey-sponsored, some form of Turkey-sponsored Sunni crescent would be formed around Israel, which was even more, how to say, even more dangerous towards Israel's security from their perspective than this Iranian-led alliances. And immediately you could follow that in the Middle East, and I think it is related to Bosnia and Herzegovina, how United States during Obama's administration was changing its attitude towards Arab Spring, like in the mid-2010s, when they understood what might happen in the Middle East. And Chovic and Dodik and those guys who were talking to, they were also afraid, because of the close ties that SDA had with the AKP, that Sunni crescent might be extended even like to Bosnia. So you would have like Sunni crescent starting in Velika Kladuša and ending somewhere on the borders of Algeria, like recreation of the Ottoman Empire. It might sound fantastic, but all those decision makers are taking all these things into account. So that encouraged them even more to support politicians such as Dodik and Chovic, who were by empowering them, so they might keep SDA and the pro-Bosnian side, like SDA plus DF, I would say, to keep them under the control by giving them more power over them. Okay. So this will be short. I don't want to take your time anymore. I exceeded like 6 minutes, as I can see. So we can, if you want, we can go to the Q&A.
Right. So thank you for I mean, this was a history lesson that we haven't heard for a very long time. Most of us are familiar with some of the information and not with some that you have shared, which was very valuable to know. But so we are the working group for Bosnia and Herzegovina here in the United States. We have tried to raise awareness about the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina and to influence politics and politicians in the United States, because we can do that as a political action committee. And we just want to know if someone else doesn't have another question, obviously, for Professor Muhasilovic. How can we help from at this point of time, which is very hard for Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as for the rest of the world with the Trump administration and the specific stance that's happening? How can we help? And I would actually, that's one question for you, but I would actually like to have others, if they have any questions, ask their questions first. Anybody?
Just sorry for being too superficial, because we're talking about the 30 years and I had 30
I know.
minutes.
Well,
So
no,
it is 1 minute.
I
It's
know.
1 year.
Right. So anyway, how can we help from the United States? What is it that we could do? Because you do know what the political structure is right now in Bosnia and Herzegovina, what the political structure, you're very knowledgeable about the political structure in Bosnia and Herzegovina, right, in the world right now, in the United States, and the powers that may be. I mean, what do you see as an out for Bosnia right now? And how can we in the United States that have ties to Bosnia and Herzegovina, that have citizenships, that were born there, or that love that country, like Philip or Patrick or David Pettigrew do, what can we do to help?
I think, I mean, you know how politics in the United States work. You probably know that better than me. Like in the US politics, money talks. You have like a lot of countries who are lobbying for their own national interests by paying money to different groups or different politicians. That's what Croatia and Serbia are doing for years. They are basically bribing, we call that bribing in Bosnia, politicians in the US for their policies. So United States would send diplomats that they like, that they would push their policies. Politicians would promote their agenda on international stage or inside the US politics. And they are extensively using the diasporas for that. And they are spending enormous amount of money for that purpose. Bosnia is, as a state, is not doing almost, I mean, it's doing nothing as a state, okay? And I don't believe our politicians understand the importance of and the power of lobbying inside American politics. They believe, there is a still belief in among the Bosnian politicians, since I often talk with them, there is a belief that United States would be on Bosnia's side no matter what. I don't believe that is the case. So United States cares of its own interests. They don't care about Bosnia. So if those interests are overlapping, it's good. But if they're not overlapping, we are in deep trouble. And if you manage like to, as a association or your community that you have in the United States could raise money for lobbying, that would be good. And I believe there are few people in the United States who know how that should be done. So I don't know what is the exact address. I don't know the politicians in the United States, but I believe there are Bosnian Americans and Bosnians who know those people and who could basically help us with that. So I believe the lobbying is the only thing that you can do as a Bosnian Americans. And as much as money, I mean, you need a lot of money for that because we're talking about billions here. You're basically racing with countries who are investing billions in American politics.
Patrick would also know, as well as everybody else in this group, that we have tried lobbying without much money through different organizations even before. And we were quite successful when, as you were saying, the political views of Bosnia and Herzegovina and United States were aligned before. What do you think? But at this point, we know we have asked and we have tried to engage Bosnian politicians to invest into lobbying in United States, because that's how it works. I mean, unless you have someone to begin that in Bosnia, it's very hard, and unless you have political support and I would say state support, it's very difficult to mobilize the people here as well, even though, yes, there's people who are very interested in working hard to do that. But what do you think would be now, what is your feeling about what is happening with the change, as you were saying, how politics in the United States changes with every presidency? I think that at this point we still do not. The United States still doesn't even have an ambassador in of the United States in Sarajevo.
Yes.
So what do you think is going to happen now that Trump? I mean, what do you see happening now that Trump has come to power? And do you see any kind of shift in that regard?
I see some shift, but the problem is that we never know with Trump, like what is in his mind. I mean, what next he's going to do? Like from my opinion, he does like crazy things. So who knows? But I'm afraid that the United States is going towards isolationism. Like that happened like in the past in the American politics. So basically before the 1945, I mean, American foreign policy was isolationism. So if they go back to that policy, we cannot count much on the United States. Neither can Serbia and Croatia. So that means basically that United States is going to be disinterested in happenings in the Balkans, which will open space for other actors to position themselves in the region, whether it is Russia after the Ukrainian crisis. I see Turkey as the most logical one. Germany is too weak at the moment. EU is divided. So probably Russia and Turkey. So I don't know. Maybe Trump does not have a problem with that. I don't know. We saw what has happened in Syria. He does not have any problem to pull out from Syria and to leave it to Turkey and Israel. He does not have problems with that. He might do something similar to the Balkans. We never know. And the only thing maybe we could expect from the United States and hope for is that to eliminate these bad policies that they are following in the Balkans. That would mean stopping the support for Čović and Dodik. That would be enough from the US side. Because Čović could not do this if there was no Michael Murphy here in Sarajevo. He could not do this. Because like the pyramid went this way, like there was Derek Chollet in America under Blinken. Under Chollet, there was Christopher Hill. Under Hill, there was Murphy. Under Murphy, there was Schmidt. Under Schmidt, there was basically Čović, and Croatia was helping this, helping them to basically impose this electoral law. That was the pyramid, right? So Americans intentionally, under the Biden administration, which was a huge disappointment for Bosnians, they intentionally decided to help Croatia and Serbia in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Just stopping them, I mean, just, if they would stop helping them, that would be enough from American side at this stage.
Well, that's exactly how this happened for us, because we created this group. Patrick spearheaded the creation of this group before the election of President Biden, because we were, based on his previous, actions, we were actually hoping that by creating this group and by Biden being for Bosnia, because he was so much for Bosnia before, that we would actually create some momentum. But as you said, the disappointment was terrible. David, were you first, or is it Philip?
Oh, Phil.
I'll step back. David, go ahead. No
Okay,
problem.
thank you, guys.
Oh, well, thanks, Phil. Yeah, I wanted to thank Professor Muhasilovic for his thorough, analysis, and I'm trying to lower my hand there. And I guess I had, I thought he said something towards the end that reminded me that I've read, I think mainly in, it was in CNN, but then there were echoes of it in the Sarajevo media, that the U.S. was systematically closing consulates and embassies, or planning to close consulates and embassies around the world, and have, maybe so, and so it is not beyond the realm of possibility that the U.S. embassy in Sarajevo would close under the Trump administration, not just consulates in Mostar or Belgrade. Or I'm not sure if there's one in Mostar. There's one in Belgrade. So I thought that was really a telling sign of what the professor was talking about, that there's this isolationism. So the idea would be to have maybe a regional embassy, which might remain in Belgrade or someplace else, that would, rather than
Zagreb, they stay. So
I thought that's problematic. But the other thing I wondered about was if you, because you essentially wrote the book on this, what positive role, what helpful role could Turkey play in the current situation, given the implied threats from Republika Srpska's new constitution, potential secession, some of the threats of provocation that are coming from efforts to say Dodik's resisting arrest. We read recently that there was SIPA made a faint-hearted attempt to arrest him in East Sarajevo, and the police blocked the arrest. So, what, given the worst case scenario, what can we depend on Turkey for? So, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Turkey's capacities are very limited at the moment. So Turkey at this stage is a power in making. I don't believe they have the capacities to radically change things in Bosnia in this or that direction still. Although, yes, they are a member of the Peace Implementation Council. They are part of the EU4 Althea mission, although they are not European Union country. So they're very active here in the region, and they are liked by the Bosniaks primarily. That's what surveys show. So the last survey about the popularity of the foreign leaders said that the most popular foreign leader in Bosnia and Herzegovina was Erdogan, and that the most liked country was Turkey. So it is a power in making. And what positive role? Well, I believe they can, and I believe they had a positive role in the last few years, because Turkey was the only country which was against the amendments to the electoral law. It was the only country which openly opposed it. I remember that process. But the problem was that I believe Turkey is one of the reasons why this happened, because the role that as like the ties between the SDA and AKP obviously frightened many, and they decided to go in the direction of reducing the power of the Bosniaks. And I also criticized, you might remember that when the Erdogan had elections in Turkey and he was not allowed to held a rally in Germany and Netherlands, so Bosnia welcomed him. I strongly criticized that move, and I told back then that we will have serious problems because of that, because we allowed him to have a election rally here in Sarajevo. So that was a stupid move from SDA's side. But definitely Turkey played a positive role for the last few years. Whether it will play a positive role in the future, we don't know. But I believe Turkey still is not having enough capacities. But I believe their power is growing. If United States withdraws from the region, I mean, withdrawing means like reducing the capacity of involvement here in the not total withdrawal. I believe then the only country which could take over would be Turkey, but it would not be successful in a way that the United States was, because although Erdogan is having personal ties with Dodik himself, so he's close to Dodik and is a Begovic as well, and he is pushing this like the policy of reconciling the reconciliation between the Serbs and the Bosniaks. So he's pushing that policy, Erdogan, and Putin is also in favor of that. But Izetbegovic is not interested, and Dodik is continuing to be crazy. So the problem is with the Dodik actually. So Dodik is not willing to give up on his separatism, and that is basically stopping the reconciliation between the Bosniaks and the Serbs. And Croats would not like to see that. That would be a nightmare for the HDZ. But Turkey is becoming more and more active, and in my opinion, it will take some time for Turkey to build these capacities that would allow Turkey to basically take the role that United States used to play.
Thank you. Philip, you had a question?
I apologize for coming in late, but I'm going to watch the recording after to see what I missed. I have two questions. One is an extension of Djenita's question. After this meeting, I go to another meeting, which is for a group which is assisting the Congressional Caucus for Bosnia. It has just been reestablished. In addition to that, a group of senators and Congress people wrote a strong letter to Secretary of State Rubio about a month ago. So right now, the Congressional Caucus for Bosnia has 3 members, but I think that they will be able to start to build again and increase the number of members. So there are some people in Congress who strongly support Bosnia, people with no ties, such as some of our Congressman, Jake Auchincloss, who's really interested in international relations, and he's very interested in Bosnia. What can we tell them that they can do? We have a team. We can draft a letter for them to get signatures to send to the Secretary of State. So my first question is, what is the best thing that they can do? Because we do have supporters. And number 2, I don't know if I missed it or not, what is the latest that's going on in Serbia? I don't know if you would address that, because I've been trying to watch on the news and see these mass demonstrations. So those are my 2 questions.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you, Philip.
Like, well, they could do many things, that congressional caucus. Like, first thing that can be done, like in very short period, is pushing the arrest, imprisonment of Dodik. With Dodik in power, not being arrested by the state police, as each day is passing, Bosnia is becoming a weaker state. So the first thing that could be pushed through American politics, and I believe America is having that capacity to push that in Bosnia, is to arrest Dodik. Dodik and few more guys around him. That's first thing. Second thing is they could block his account, banking account, because Schmidt passed just a few days ago, he passed a decree in which he banned the financing of Dodik's party through the state budget. Okay, but that is like less than 10% of his party budget. The majority of Dodik's financing is coming through Russia, through Serbia, through Serbian Orthodox Church, through different nationalist organizations around the world, through like crime and so on and so, like big part of his financing is coming from other sides and not from the budget. What I'm afraid of is that Schmidt is going to use this card that he like punished Dodik to push the electoral law further to help the HDZ of Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's I'm afraid of. He will say to Bosniaks, look, I punished the Dodik, but now you have to give the electoral law to the HDZ. Like rearrangement of the Council of Presidency and the and basically giving the control over the Central Electoral Committee, CIC, as we call, to HDZ. That's what I'm afraid of. What he did not do, and he could do, Schmidt, was the closing down of his banking account. If he does that, then Dodik is in serious trouble. So closing of his banking account and imprisonment of Dodik are the two things that maybe you could push through American politics. When it comes to Serbia, well, Serbia is after the Belarus and Russia probably the most autocratic European state, and the Western community is not raising this as a serious problem, is because they need Serbia for their geopolitical interests. So basically, the political scene is controlled by Vučić. Then he controls the media, and the power he's having is having inside the parliament. So only Lukashenko in Belarus is having more political power over the state institutions than Vučić. Even Putin is not that strong inside the Duma, like Vučić is inside the Serbian politics. So it is highly corrupted state, highly corrupted regime, lying regime, closing down the people. So he had these student protests going on for months, but because of the fact that he's controlling the media, basically the energy for that is steaming down. So they basically students are defeated by the regime, and this regime would not go this far if there was no support coming from the West. They were in need of Serbia after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because Russia played that card of sitting on two chairs. They basically would blackmail the West, and West would be caved in, would be giving them whatever they want, right? So basically Serbia is trying to play a role of like little Yugoslavia, like playing both blocks for their own interest.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate situation, and probably very true. I'm very sorry to hear that no change will come out of all the protests and all of the attention that was given to Serbia students, and we were hoping to see some change like it happened before. Are there any more questions for Professor Muhasilovic today?
May I have one from my cousin Jamal?
Sure.
He's listening.
Jamal, is he listening? I don't know. He's not answering.
All right.
He's not. I'm actually surprised that he's not asking questions, because he would always be the one to ask questions. Anyway, if we have no more questions, Patrick, do you want to wrap up?
Sure, and I just want to thank Professor Muhasilovic for really an astute analysis. Sorry for tripping over your name.
No problem.
you know, I think you did a brilliant job of compressing 30 years of history, but gave us a perspective. We didn't get here yesterday. These are longstanding problems. They require some thought and constructive ideas for how to move forward in a way that's helpful for Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I thank you. I thank the people who asked questions. And Paya, did you want to say something?
Oh, Pasic.
Okay, maybe you just got unmuted accidentally.
Paya?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, thanks, Paya. I'm going to put him back on mute. Okay, and so we thank you so much for your work, your brilliant analysis, and your dedication really to what is good for Bosnia and Herzegovina, for the region, and ultimately for Bosnians wherever they are. So thank you again, and thank you to all of you for attending today.
Thank
I
you.
also thank you for fighting for Bosnia. So we really appreciate that. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
Thank you. Well, you're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. You have a great day, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.